Thanks all for sticking with us and with the program for so long, and thanks for coming to my talk. So my name is Stefan. I'm a principal global solution architect at Red Hat, specifically working on ING Bank. So this talk has nothing to do with ING Bank. Joking, of course, but that means in my role I'm responsible for the technical partnership between Red Hat and ING. I'm also a team topologist advocate. I love the topics we discuss here today, and I love to apply open practices, etc. So this will be a story-driven talk about a organizational transformation at a fictitious company called Parasol, and we'll focus on business outcomes, about the organizational lessons. It will not be a deep dive in technical detail. I think that's fine. I think that's also not what you're expecting. No, maybe you were expecting that, me being from Red Hat, but let's see. Let's see, before we jump in, you see this small thing in the right bottom corner. I added that as a legend to illustrate when I talk about from the perspective of a platform team or a streamlined team, or from the user or from the organization, or all together. It's not completely black and white, but I think it is useful in understanding what I'm talking about. So let's dive in. So Parasol is an insurance company, as I mentioned, but they have a strong focus on claim resolution. Unfortunately, as you can see, probably they are in some trouble. Their mean time to repair is actually taking too long. There are a lot of claims which are actually on hold. All of this is impacting their customer satisfaction, so their NPS scores are going down, but also their availability of so there's the reliability of their business critical services are also down, and they have a very hard time to actually produce and deliver a really relevant functionality to the market effectively. And all of this has a lot to do with the fact that these claim handlers we're talking about, they have assistance from some kind of chatbot, but it's actually not really useful at all and doesn't really provide them any assistance. So it means that all the work is actually with them and with them themselves. So let's go in a little bit deeper. So diving in deeper, we're looking from the perspective, as you can see, the legend from a streamlined team. A streamlined team actually supporting this claim handler product, including including the chatbot, and we can identify some interesting things. So what you see here is a flow distribution, where you see actually the flow items balanced out on features and defects and disks and risks and technical depth. And what you see is actually it's flatlining regarding the feature part. And other stuff is actually building up. And this imbalance is actually hurting the outcomes. And at first, this team was able to actually deliver a satisfactory experience. They had actually time left to do things, so they could focus a lot on these features, etc. But over time, because of the neglecting the technical depth, actually this accumulated, etc., and they started running into problems. Into problems as in the undelivered features, unfixed bugs, and too little testing. And I think we can all understand what this will do in the end, of course, with users consuming our service and the impact on actually the business outcomes and their ability to handle and actually support their end customers. So balancing between all these flow items is actually critical. New releases, if you would do that, will of course have new features. So it's normal that there is a certain pattern in there, but of course we need to keep all of this into check and make sure that there's a balance. And these signs of imbalance in focus, they were there, and also the increasing number of issues that was there, but unfortunately Parasol was not able to detect it in time. So when discussing time to market, it's very important to understand what we actually mean. And so I would like to discuss the impact of being later and what it actually means. Because often when we look at the impact of being later, we think okay, that's just a small delay. There's only a small cost which is incurred. But unfortunately, that's not the entire story. So it's actually a lot worse. Being slower actually means that this value we talk about is actually probably realized by the competitor. And the impact of this is it's a lot bigger than just being a little bit slower. Maybe you'll even lose a customer, you lose your position in the market, maybe you'll be irrelevant entirely. So at this point, Parasol's claim handling was not really effective, and they were not meeting the customer needs. And this is, by the way, this chatbot I was talking about, and you can see it doesn't know anything. So their claim handling process was just too cumbersome, and the technology in place, so this chatbot is not very useful. So something had to change at Parasol to actually avoid it to becoming even worse, and let's see what they did. So how did Parasol actually jumpstart their transformation? And having in mind that all frameworks are wrong, but some are useful, Parasol referred to Kotter actually to lead their change. So some of you, or all of you maybe even, might be familiar with that. And they understand that a vision is not something you can draw by a single person. Actually, assuming you want proper backing, it starts all with a market opportunity. And market opportunity, I mean something which we can safely observe. So something which is actually out there, which we can observe, and through that actually find sponsorship. So people actually build a coalition on the willing of people who actually want to observe this together with us, and from there actually start building out a vision. Because immediately starting with a vision is something which is often scary because it implies change. And by using this market opportunity, so we came up with this vision together with our coalition of the willing, and from there we went through like peer-to-peer, multi-level conversations. We actually expanded, and we built this volunteering of this army of volunteers, people who actually were backing our change. And from there on, we could actually start to make these changes to our organization one step at a time, release early, release often, and actually from there grow and sustain the acceleration, and actually at some point institutionalize the change. So now we have our sense of urgency, and this also all led to us coming up with a new mission. New vision. So this is it. This is the vision for Parasol. All the work, all the hard work. I will not read it out, but what it actually says something like is that Parasol's claim resolution, they want it to be the fastest and the most customer-friendly in the industry. So that's what we are aiming for. So Parasol realized that their unfair advantage is actually this superior claims service. So everything not directly enhancing that, for example, the infrastructure or their tools, that should be standardized, automated, and actually very easily consumable. No distractions allowed, because we want to work on our vision, and doing this and having this in place, this provided clarity to the teams at Parasol. So they could stop reinventing the wheel on common things and common issues, and put energy in where innovation, where it actually matters. As said, we want to remove this variance. So the variability in the landscape can be very impactful. It leads to a lot of turbulence, sorry. And we actually want to squeeze that out. So that's the squeeze here part. So remove the turbulence from our foundation, so we actually can have more stability and have more focus actually in the differentiation part. So that's where the unfair advantage sits. We want to spend as much time there as possible, experiment as much as possible, because this will allow us to be more successful and have many successful strategies in place. And this is also what came out of all the work. So I'm now jumping ahead. What they actually did is that Parasol introduced this virtual assistant, this agentic AI-based assistant to help them out and to really provide this ultimate customer experience. But we'll see that in a little bit later. So this is how it all started to accelerate their outcomes, by squeezing out the inefficiencies. So we need to acknowledge that we can't deliver fast if everything breaks, and nor can we perfectly stable but never innovate. So speed depends on stability. That's a quote by someone else. And we need both. And this is a principle, or a key principle, at least as far as I know, from platform engineering. And our technology platform needs to be delivering both freedom and flexibility, as well as maintaining security, compliance, and of course reliability. So we need to balance that. We need to do both. So no compromise. Speed depends on stability. And now achieving this vision requires everyone's buy-in and understanding. And before we dive deeper into how Parasol structured their new organization, specifically their technology platform, I want to look at a specific practice they applied. It's called collaborative pathways. And it all starts with the individuals or the individual teams and figuring out understanding what their motivation is. So what their aspiration is, their goals, their concerns. Because all the parties involved, this is very important to understand, because thereby you can build relationships which are based on trust and transparency. The motivation part, incentives drive behavior, and so understanding motivation is key, in my opinion, to get anything done. I see that also day to day in my role. If I don't understand what drives the behavior in someone else, it's very hard for me to really know what value actually looks like. So during the exercise, each stakeholder actually answered these questions. So what is your motivation, aspiration, your goals, your concerns? And from there, we actually worked, driving by our vision. We came up with these joint goals. And together, we came up with, at the joint vision, the desired outcomes, measurable objectives, and we implemented governance. And with governance, I also mean what communication should look like. And of course, this is a live thing, right? So this changes over time. This is not static. This is not a one-time exercise, and this is like something you do continuously. So uniting behind the vision is an active, continuous effort. So they also onboarded this open practice within their teams. So being the business users, the streamlined teams, and or the platform teams. And through this, teams learned that what the claims agents actually, what they worried about, what the developers or the streamlined teams actually aspired to, but also what the leaders needed to see. And they dove into the advantage, the benefit, as well as the personal benefit of all these of individuals. And personally, I often explain this using the analogy of a car, buying a station wagon, being the advantage, being like how many IKEA billies, the smaller ones, the closets, can you fit in the back of your car, being the advantage. And then the benefit would be like, okay, how many times do how many times do I need to drive to actually help my friend move, for example, using the station wagon? Personal benefit then being like, ideally I can do it in one time, because then I have a lot of time left to actually to do something for myself. So, and of course, this is also something of course, very important to understand when you talk to someone. If you want to deliver value, then you do it in their terms. Understanding each other's perspective was foundational for the team building and for the cooperation. So we now have the joint vision, a clear understanding of what good looks like for each team, and they started to work together towards achieving their positive business outcomes. So, with all these lessons learned, it was crystal clear that the supporting technology platform and the other teams, the streamlined teams, needed to step up their game, because we wanted to deliver on this vision, right? The thing we talked about. And while they learned a lot about the organization and where they wanted to go as a whole, they had to work to understand the ecosystem. So they identified, using stakeholder mapping, the users, the stakeholders and the influencers. And users, for example, being developers, so the people actually using the products. Stakeholders, for example, being the C-suite, and knowing what they would be paying for, right? So they have to pay for it. And of course, some of the influencers, some people like within infra who absolutely also have a stake in all of this. And they all have a different interest, and it's very important to understand what it is. Of course, we need to win the hearts and minds of these people, and we do this through focus, through prioritization, value-driven decisions, and open communication. So, Parasol knew that each of these stakeholders in our own way cared about different outcomes. And hence, having clear and measurable outcomes, closed, short feedback loops, and apply a show, not tell, and release early and often approach was key. Now going into the streamlined teams and the Parasol platform team, and they actually identify the gap. And now I could ask the question if we recognize the gap, which is illustrated in this image. But honestly, I think the gap illustrated here, it's not something which actually easily surfaces in practice. Because in my opinion, it's only something which exists in theory. At least in the conversations I have. And the reason for saying that is because this gap is always closed by someone. And in my experience, this gap is always closed by the streamlined team. At least that was also the case within Parasol, where the streamlined team actually closed the gap towards the platform. And that for me means that that platform was definitely not a fit for purpose. Because what that means, of course, is that if it works like that, that means actually that the streamlined team who is working on this product, like this claim handler product, right, with this chatbot, and also working now on this virtual assistant, that they also, on top of that, need to stretch themselves towards the platform, actually closing this gap, taking on even more work, stretching themselves. And I think if we look at the cognitive load and what we all know and the different types, then they're probably now working on stuff which should actually be offloaded from them and taken on by the platform. So the platform team asked themselves how we structured ourselves in a way we can truly meet the customer needs. And I mean the internal customers. So in this case, and I see this a lot with customers, when I have the conversation with the platform team, it's very hard to convince them to change. But I often let the streamlined teams do the work, because the streamlined teams, if they understand that they are actually cutting their customers short by taking on work which should be done by the platform team, they will very quickly go towards the platform team and actually start asking them to step up their game. So as you might have seen already, or thought already, or guessed already, the platform team was actually expecting from their engineers to be experts in everything. They had to take on way too much work. And over time we have seen that our engineers, they have been transformed, and we've asked to take on more domains. So they transformed to be experts in one part, to be experts in generalists, and to take on more and more domains, to the point that they are actually this full stack engineers. And in my opinion, these unicorns, and for this being a full stack fallacy in my opinion, because these experts, the specialists, what I see with my customers is that you introduce this, and over time, actually these people become generalists, because how do you say this? It's actually something like we want to go to this full stack approach. At first, day one, these people are experts, and over time they become generalists, and actually mistakes come start popping up, mistakes are being made, etc., etc. And Parasol, asking engineers to be experts in everything, that was actually failing. And we know this because we were at a team topologies conference, so we know platform engineering, and we know how to handle this, and we know there are a lot of how to tackle this. So Parasol also knew that they had a lot of skilled people, but expecting them to manage the infrastructure, to do security, to do data, and to build new features altogether was just unrealistic. So they recognized that they needed specialists, but they needed specialists working in cross-functional teams and focusing on their part of the value chain. So these specialists, they needed to be supported by a thinnest viable platform. And they had no need for everyone doing everything. So they opted for, we want happy engineers with manageable cognitive load. What this looked like at Parasol? So yeah, I could give you many examples, but I will give you an example of their automation platform. And Parasol initially had an automation platform actually built on where the team actually took on the work to have a do-it-yourself Kubernetes environment, as well as maintain their own HA database setup. All of these components made up out of community open source, so they had to integrate them themselves. They have to do lifecycle management themselves, etc., etc. And because of this approach, the team actually ran out of breath. The team ran out of energy. They were focusing, started too low in the stack to build out, actually run out of energy before they actually got to the point that they could start creating value for the streamlined teams, therefore not being fit for purpose. And this, again, led to streamlined teams having to focus on the wrong things, not being able to focus as much as they would on product features. And we all have seen what happens. The claim resolution ran into problems, et cetera, et cetera. So they realized they needed to change this approach. And for the untrained eye, it looks very similar, but it's completely different. So as we just saw, Parasol's streamlined team had to spend too much time on plumbing, and therefore they did not have enough time to work on claims features. So they needed a more fit-for-purpose platform. So what they did is they started looking around in their organization, and they actually figured out there was already a complete, maintained as a platform, as a product, database service available, where they could just consume a database which they needed. The same for CI/CD. It was just available there as a platform, and a complete hosting platform they could consume. And by doing that, and consuming these standard services which are available, they were actually able to focus more on delivering the value which the streamlined teams actually needed. And not just like we have a more interesting platform, they could actually start delivering new capabilities which were always there but never delivered. So they could even enrich the experience for the streamlined teams, take on more teams. So they could go wider, they could go deeper. It was just a way more pleasant experience and a way more valuable platform just by offloading some of the boring stuff to other platforms. So Parasol's common goal was to improve claim resolution, and they realized that could only happen if they empower their teams with the right technology platform. How many more minutes? 7? 8? 8-ish. Okay. Yeah, I think. Yeah. So very quickly about this one. They didn't just blindly follow on what to build and what to buy, etc. They actually used or just started to building everything. They actually used Wardley mapping to actually look at their organization and to see where they should spend their time, what they should build, what they should buy, where they could use stuff off the shelf, where they could use utility, etc. And I think a couple of talks back, there was a great talk about way more detail about this, how all of things like domain-driven design, team topologies, and Wardley mapping come together. I think that's super interesting. And I will skip this for now, but important to say is that they identified that because their unfair advantage is in this claims app and this AI model, they were focusing their time there, but actually starting to use a commercial off-the-shelf platform for MLOps to support them. So let's revisit how they kickstarted the change. So what we want to do is we want to start, in my experience, we want to start with a value chain, or in this case, what we call a value slice. So that means inviting people from the claims department, so inviting people from the business, inviting people from engineering, reliability, infra, data center, from all the different layers, actually top down to your organization, and bringing them together to actually identify what good looks like using target outcomes, value stream mapping, for example. How might we doing assessments of capabilities in the landscape on infrastructure, platform, and software to identify where the priorities lie, where we should focus on focus first. And by approaching it like that, we can actually and taking something into account like which is actually a business component, can actually immediately show impact to the business. So we can, by taking these value lines, improving that, we can build a story which we can share in the organization, to which we can earn trust from the organization that it can be done, work on new technology, of course also new ways of working, and from there actually earn the trust from the organization using this storytelling and start building from there. So scaling from there, I mean, so other people banging on the door, actually hopefully banging on the door to also jump on the same train and work in a similar way. And this approach that Parasol used ties directly into the business outcomes and development morale, making the impact tangible. So unfortunately, I have to go a little bit faster for this one. So I wanted to go into detail about all the different bullets under the technology platform. But what you see here is a picture of the Parasol's platform economy. So actually their business platform where the producers and the consumers come together, creating all the service, but using all the service provided by the streamlined teams and the platform team, and of course the other teams as well. And I think there will be nothing new here, but we're focused on the reusable service and standardized consumption patterns. So in this case, the platform team towards the streamlined teams, they provide these guardrails, these enabling constraints. And let me be clear, that's from my experience, what I see often, and if you go back a couple of slides, you see that these teams, they run out of breath who create these platforms. And that's where quite a big pitfall actually sits when you create these golden paths, because these golden paths are sitting quite high up. If you run out of breath too early and you just provide the components and allow teams to create their own golden paths, then in my opinion you end up with 2,000 teams with 2,000 golden paths because nobody likes them. So what if you provide like just a couple of golden paths and allow for contributions to this golden path? Like, just prove me wrong. And start to set up this motion of contributing, inner sourcing in your organization to make these things better. But that, of course, means that you need to have the energy to actually deliver at that level and make sure that you push down the stuff which is less relevant for your platform. So the success of the platform measured by the success of the teams, we know that sentence. Instead of measuring like how many features you built in your platform, you can, of course, measure what it enabled in your in the teams with the teams you using your components, right? Looking at the automated governance, security compliance, very important. Making the right thing, making good practice the how do you say it, the right thing to do. So how do you make it integral part of everything these people do? So let's see. Yeah, full self-service for teams, closed feedback loops. And understand the position in the value chain. We just saw this Wortley map. We're also sitting there somewhere, right? So we have also stuff we can push down. So stuff we should push down, but know what we deliver, where we are, what makes us successful. Focus on those high order services for our teams. Yeah, and maybe interesting to note about Parasol, because actually through this thing, actually the teams, they started to come up with new ideas. So actually this whole contributing and working under this one vision actually started to work. And one of these teams, they came up with this fraud detection module, and actually they contributed it back to the platform. So that's one of the success stories here. One common vision. Not just a goal, but also to share the components and the ideas through the platform. So what did we deliver? Starting with this Parasol being a tough spot, at risk actually of losing out to competition. Transformation at Parasol throughout the organization resulted in change in people, in process and technology. And the first high business use case was actually implemented with this virtual assistant we see here, which is a lot better because it now can actually ask, based on a claim, ask a question. It actually helps us putting in the repairs, in this case, in the system. So it's great. So it's really like offloading a lot of tasks from these claim handlers. So super happy with that. So also the customer is very happy with all the things we did, way more reliable services. Now we have 24/7 assistance for the teams, and as mentioned, happier developers, happier claim handlers, etc. So this was exactly what we were aiming for, a better experience, both internally and externally. And in my opinion, all of this was only possible because everyone from C-suite to engineers were pulling in the same direction. So they're guided by the same vision of success. And because everyone has shared understanding regarding the goal and specifically the faster and the better claims resolution we were talking about, and everybody was empowered by the platform, this idea actually turned in reality in record time. So we see the improved reliability, of course the faster time to market, and the increased developer experience. So Parasol turned around their execution, and they came out as a winner. Magic ingredient in Parasol's success wasn't just technology, and it was the people, and they were rallying around like this common goal. So, in my opinion, for successful platform engineering, it's key to unite your associates behind a common vision. So, please think about your own organization. Do all your associates have a common goal? If not, I would start there. So, thank you very much.